Chris, I wonder what you think about particularly the idea of excess. We were just talking to an analyst who was excited about semiconductors connected to EVs, but my goodness, look at Rivian. Even Tesla, one could argue that there are excesses there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is a market that is frankly struggling with the transition from a very early cycle mentality to something else. And I was struck to hear the analysts before me talk about, the beginning of a 10-year, 20-year cycle in semis. I mean, semis have been in a 10-year cycle. They've been outperforming since 2009, 2010. I think we're actually in some of the later innings of some of these moves. And I'll give you an example. We started 2021 with about 90% of the S&P in an uptrend. Today, that number is about 60%. So as the course of the year has gone on, even as the index has grinded higher, we've seen unsettledness under the surface. And we start 2022 here in a bit of a vulnerable technical spot relative to how we started this year. I don't think that's fatal, but I think it's this recognition that the market is making this transition to a more mid-cycle alignment.
Very interesting. Eugene, where do you think we are right now in the cycle? It really struck me the performance of equities on Friday and then again today after that very strong read on inflation. I know we probably expected it, of course, but I would think it would have taken a little bit more wind out of our sails than it did. Where do you think we are? What does it tell us about where we are in the cycle?
Well, Courtney, I agree with you. I thought Friday was a pretty good indicator that there is excesses in the market and that we're minimizing a lot of the issues that historically would have caused a little bit more of a market correction. I mean, where investors are willing to accept that interest rates are going to be higher, willing to accept that we have a variant that's growing again. So the COVID forces aren't out of the way. Supply chain disruptions are still intact. A lot of stocks are hitting 52-week lows, but you still have optimism generally in stocks that have limited earnings and the like. So I think that we are somewhat late cycle, and I think 2022 will probably turn out to be more defensive than a lot of analysts are predicting at this point. And it was quite illuminating this morning to hear Europe began to talk about this Omicron contagion really growing quite rapidly. And so far, we've kind of nixed that off, that it wasn't a big deal. I think that they're going to have a little bit more issues with that going forward.